Okay, so in the last video, we had just completed making this bar chart using chart.js. And so we're going to now create two more charts on this page. But first, I'd like to go ahead and make a commit. So we changed some styling and we added our charts directory, which we're going to use to hold all of our chart components. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and head back into the code. So in our source directory, and then in our app subdirectory, and then in sections, we're currently working in our section sales section. And if you recall, this is where we had just created this app bar chart. So this app bar chart is contained in a Bootstrap 4 card, and the card itself is contained in this card deck div. So this card deck structure will allow us to create multiple cards that don't connect but line up evenly across the page. So we can take a look at that here if we just simply duplicate the chart that we had just created. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a second one. And notice that we're going to pass the same app bar chart component in both cards. And so I'll go back to the page and we can kind of see how nicely that lines up just out of the box using this card deck structure with two cards. Likewise, if we made a third one here and then took a look at the page, we get three evenly spaced charts across. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have two rows of charts. The top row here will have three charts, and then the bottom row will have a single large chart. But for this video, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create pie charts that we can put in these second two cards here, or donut charts. So let's go ahead and do that. So in our charts directory, you can see that we created three types of charts: pie chart, line chart, and bar chart. So what I'm going to do is just change the second two charts here, both to pie charts. And I'll have to remember to do the closing tags as well. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and call this second chart here orders by customer. And the third chart will do, say, orders by state. And as we build out the app, and perhaps after we kind of wrap up the application, functionally speaking, then you can go back and definitely customize it as you like to fit your particular needs, create different types of charts here. These will just be for example, and they'll correspond to the data that we query from our API later in the course. And so we're just going to use these vanilla Angular components directly inside each of these card bodies. And so if we go back to the page now, we can see that they're empty. We are getting the message from each of, from that pie chart component that it's working, but of course we haven't set the chart up. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we'll obviously head into the pie chart component, and then we will head into the pie chart component.html. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete this boilerplate. And much like the line chart component, I'm just gonna place this chart in a div. And if you recall, we're using the ng2 chart library where we just apply a canvas and we have this base chart directive on it, and then we have these inputs for data, and we're just going to give these names that we can then reference in this in the component in our TypeScript. So we'll have data as pie chart data, and have colors just set to colors, labels set to pie chart labels, and chart type we could set to pie chart directly here, but I'm just going to call it pie chart type, and we'll assign it in the component level. And then we can go ahead and close out our canvas tag. Oops, and we need to close the front of the canvas tag as well. All right, so one thing to note is that we could create a more generic chart component type that we then actually pass a specific structure of data and pass the value of the chart type that corresponds to the particular chart that we'd like to render. And perhaps that's something that we would take a look at if we go through and refactor the code. But in the interest of keeping things kind of simple at first here, we're going to create separate components for each of the types of charts, which is okay too. And we'll create a new component for each of the various types of charts that we'd like to render. A little bit later on in the course, in fact, very shortly, we'll be looking a little bit more closely at the inputs and outputs of Angular components. For now, we're going to keep things quite simple as we just render constant data, sort of static data within the components themselves. So let's head over into the pie chart component TypeScript file, and we're going to create a very simple pie chart here. So I'm going to open up the template here on the side, and we'll give it a little bit more room here. Now we have these properties: pie chart data, colors, pie chart labels, and pie chart type. And so these values here need to correspond to properties on our actual pie chart component, so within this class. So what I'm going to do for pie chart data is just under the constructor here, for now the constructor will just be empty. We're going to create this pie chart data property, and we're going to say that it needs to be a number array in this case. So the pie chart data just takes the structure of an array of numbers, and then each index in that array will represent a data set on the pie chart. So we'll say like 350, 450, and 120. And then here for pie chart labels, we're going to have a string array that corresponds to the label for each of these three data sets. So if you recall, in our section sales, we said that this would sort of be orders by customer. And so let's go ahead and just make 3 fictional customers here. So we'll do like XYZ, Logistics, Main Street Bakery, and Acme Hosting, let's say. Okay, so there's our data and our labels for that data. All right, so let's go ahead and provide our colors. And so we'll set colors equal to an array of anything for now. And the way that we need to set this up is that we need to provide an object with a background color and set that to an array. And for now, we're just going to actually hard code the background color here as an array of hex values. A little bit later in the course, we're going to come through, and as we improve each of the components, we're going to provide the ability to actually theme this chart. And that's going to make it easier to then make updates globally to the colors on our charts, as well as to create different types of themes that you might want to potentially use or try out very quickly. Now we're just going to hard code some hex values in here. Okay, so we're just going to provide 3 colors for now. And then finally, we need to provide our chart type here. So we'll say our pie chart type is just equal to pie. Again, each of these properties here corresponding to the values of the inputs that we're providing to our canvas with the base chart directive here. Okay, so we'll save that and let's go take a look at the page. So you can see that we have an active chart. We have 2 instances of it. And if we hover over each of the little sections on the pie chart here, we can then see this sort of popover effect that we get with the labeled data. Likewise, provided by chart.js, we can also hide or show different data sets here by clicking on them in the legend. Also worth noting that if you prefer the way that a donut chart looks, it takes the very same input that the pie chart does, but we can just specify the pie chart type here as donut and then get this sort of effect as well. Likewise, if you'd like to change the border color on the chart, I'll show you how to do that as well. We can actually just supply a border color property here in our object. And then if we go take a look at the page, we can see that now we have a nice dark border. So lots of different things you can customize here. Also, once we parameterize the inputs to these charts, then we can have each of these two pie charts display different data to us. Now I'd like to go ahead and build a line chart that's going to fill out the sort of bottom half of our sales volume page. So let's go do that. So I'm going to close the pie chart component now. And perhaps now would also be a good time to go ahead and make it commit. Okay, so we'll head back into our line chart component. And so let's go to the line chart component HTML, and again, we'll remove the boilerplate code. And actually what I'm going to do here is copy the template from our bar chart as a starting point. So once again, we'll have our canvas element, and this time we'll have this datasets input, which will be line chart data in our line chart component. And I'll just go ahead and replace all instances here of bar with line. Okay, so now let's head into the line chart component TypeScript file. And let's think of our line chart as sort of a sales over time type of chart. So what we're going to do is provide some data that looks at, say, sales over the course of several months. So we're going to create two constants to store our mock data just to get the chart working. So let's call it line chart sample data, and it'll be an array of anything. And the structure of the line chart data that chart.js is expecting will be a series of objects that have a data property on them, which will be an array of numbers, and then a label, which will just be a string. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a sort of overlapping line chart. So we're going to have three data series, and we can imagine that these might be, let's say, like three types of services that we offer, the various sales for those services over time. So let's say that we offer a sentiment analysis package, maybe an image recognition service, and then maybe we do some type of forecasting service. So each of these data series will correspond to a particular type of service that we offer, and we'd like to look at their sales over time. And so once again, we'll just put in some mock data here. And so let's imagine these are months, and so we're just looking back 6 months, and then I'm going to go ahead and just change out some of the data here just to make each series a little bit different. Okay, so we've got some different data there. Now we're going to go ahead and create just an array of strings here for our line chart labels. And so let's go ahead and just create an abbreviated list of months here, perhaps. Okay, and all right, so we've got 6 months here corresponding to 6 data points over 3 different series. So again, I'm just going to collapse the sort of file browser over here, and we'll move our line chart component template file over to the right. And now we just need to go ahead and set these properties. So line chart data, again, corresponding to the value that we're providing on this input here, will be equal to our line chart sample data. And we should move this up above our ng-on-init method. And we have our line chart labels is equal to our line chart labels. Our line chart options will be, we'll set it to be anything, and basically we're just going to once again provide the ability for it to be responsive. So we'll set responsive equal to true. Line chart legend we'll set to true. I believe that's true by default. And then line chart type will be set to line. Oops, and we forgot colors over here as well, so let's go ahead and put this anywhere. Colors will be set to a property called line chart colors. And our line chart colors are going to be a little bit more complex. We can look at how to do that. Basically, I think what I'll do for now is store them as a constant value here at the top of the file, and then we'll move it out of this file. But for now, we'll have this const line chart colors, and this is going to be an array of objects. Much like when we were styling the pie chart, we saw how we could set the background color and the border color, that sort of thing. But we have 3 data series here. And so we're going to have 3 separate objects here to represent the colors for each of these data series. So we're going to have a background color, and we can also look that we can use RGBA colors here, so we'll do that just to show it. So we'll create this kind of blue-green color with low alpha value. And we'll set a border color on it. And in fact, for line charts, we can also set properties for point background color, which, just to keep things simple here, I'm going to go ahead and just make these black. Point border color, even point hover background color, and we'll make those just a tiny bit lighter, and point hover border color. And you can go through, and I'll provide a link to where you can go check out the Chart.js docs to see the various other types of colors that you can set here. It's really completely customizable. Okay, and since we have 3 series, we're going to have 3 of these, so I'll go ahead and paste 2 more. And we'll go ahead and I'm just going to change the background color and the border color for each of these remaining 2. Okay, so we've got sort of dark bluish type color, something of a yellow type color, and then a more blue-green color. And you can see that our definition for line chart colors here is quite large. So now I'll show you how we can just move this line chart colors constant out of this file. So I'm going to go ahead and close the line chart component template and expand our file explorer here. And what I'm going to do is create a shared directory in our app. So we'll go ahead and create a new folder here called shared. And now within the shared directory, I'm going to go ahead and create a new file, and we're just going to call it chart.colors.ts. And now all we need to do here is actually go ahead and grab the constant line chart colors array that we had just created inside of our line chart component. I'm going to cut it out of here, and I'm going to paste it in this chart.colors.ts file, and then we're simply going to export it so that it's available for import in other areas of our application. So now back in line chart component.ts, we can simply import line chart colors from, and then we need to go back 2 directories to get into our shared directory, and then chart.colors. So we're not quite at the point yet where we're worried about theming our application and theming the various charts. This was just to show you how you can pull an array out of this file and keep it in a shared location, just to kind of keep things a little bit neater. Okay, so we've got our sample data and our labels as well as the colors for this chart. So let's go ahead and place it in our application now. So let's head back into our sections and our section sales component.html, and we can kind of play around with this layout a little bit. I think what I'll do is make this top set of cards that contains our card deck a row. So we're just going to say row fluid cards, and we'll go take a look at our page now. Okay, so that still looks pretty good, and I'm going to create a second row here that's going to contain our line chart. So I'll come down to the second to last div here, and we'll go ahead and do that here. So div class, row fluid, this will also be cards, and we're going to create a div class card shadow card theme. And just like our other charts that are contained in cards, we're going to have a div class card header with card header theme. And a div class card body. And our card header will just contain the purpose of this chart, which will be, we'll say, monthly sales by product. And then in the card body here will be where we have our app-line chart. Okay, so let's head back to the page and check it out. All right, so yeah, it's starting to look good. It's taking up perhaps a little bit more space than we'd like, but that should be pretty easy to remedy. What I'm going to do is just specify a height on the canvas element so that it only fills up as much as is required here. So to do that, what I think I'll do is look directly at the styles for this section sales component. And so maybe for this card here, where we have the monthly sales by product, the line chart here, what I'm going to do is supply a custom class called card bottom. And then if we head into the section sales component.css, I'll define it here, card bottom. And I'm just going to set the height here to, let's say, 40 VH, and we'll take a look at what this looks like. Okay, so our card got smaller, but the chart, the canvas element itself, is actually outside of the bounds of this div. So in order to get the chart not to spill over this div, what I think I'm going to do is actually set a height on it. So what we'll do is we'll head back. If we take a look at our line chart component.html, we have this div class chart. And so let's actually define that in our CSS for the line chart component. So for instance, if we set it to 400 pixels height, and then on the canvas element, I'm actually going to set just an inline style here of a width and height of 100%. Okay, so that looks a little bit better, almost. Let's go ahead and make a slight adjustment to the size of the bottom card here. So it's at 40 VH. I think 50 VH is what we're probably looking for. And that's in our section sales component.css. So now let's take a look. Okay, so that's definitely looking a lot better. Just like with our other charts, we can hide or show different elements on the chart by selecting or deselecting the series from our legend here. Remember also that you could definitely change the way your chart looks here by adjusting the chart colors object that we defined in this component. Okay, so we now have 3 different types of charts, and we have 2 instances of our donut chart here. And when we wire up our API, each of these charts will be taking as their input some data that is provided by our API, which is connected to our Postgres database. So all of that to come. In the next video, we're going to take a look at our next page in this application, which will be this latest orders page, in which we're going to create a table for displaying recent orders from the system.